So I think we are ready. Yeah, that's awesome. And from last time, I was also kind of like worked on this project before, and I was trying out few different ideas. Also, I noticed one thing in our API for create tags. I think we were overcomplicating few things, and we probably don't want to do that. So as of now, we are just simply calling where insert. So we simply now we have a function to check whether those entries are new, and db sync nodes. So what db sync nodes does, we count the db count nodes tags. So we will count all the relationship data by node id and tag id, and if it's zero, when it's zero, we simply create a new entry, right? So it's like super simple and clear. And the way we were doing, I wanted to like make a function so I can reuse it at multiple occasions, but with that I think this kind of functionality simply takes like more time, and also there will be other user case, so we also have to clear that. But for now I simply have this thing right here. Okay, if not sure if you guys noticed, I kind of like also pulled out all the models from like all the methods from our users model, right? So I have it in here, and I just wanted to try a few things, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to keep it or not that way. And also I was looking for if we could get for validation, if we could get a better like response. And for validations, I was thinking maybe we could do a few things. Let's say in code.clj, this has to be code.clj in org. Let's see. Yes, so in here, so what I was doing, I was simply rendering the request, and request contains a method, and so this is like the position of routing, and in our case version 1, and if the user hits like v1 and login, right? So we could specify a spec for that. Let's say for this API we wanna run those rules, and we could have like a middleware in here, yeah, something like that, and where we check in here, and if the response that we get from the request does not if it's not spec compliant, then we simply return the error from here and continue to process our request. But what I noticed with that approach, one thing is it will be hard to test against post, get, put, and also URL can have IDs in that, right? So this kind of behavior will also complicate managing that, right? And what else? Then again, if yeah, so I think what we can do is like define rules. Let's say for let's say we define something like get for get request, and if that request comes on login, and we will give it a spec rule, right? Something like API login, API/login, and we can like specify the route rules, and but then again there is an issue, right? With that we have to like specify each route one more time, and have it in a way that we also have to like spec check, but that will reduce the amount we have to check data in here. So with that we simply just parse the data, or one thing we could do is like assign a new index, and we can also like give access to that data into our handler instead of request. But then again it's like changing a lot of things, and I'm not sure if I want to continue with that approach, but checking login and all that, validating user input in here, kind of like I think we have to do this in middleware, but I just want to find out an efficient way to do that, but I'm not sure how we're gonna do that. So go to YouTube, right? YouTube org. So this project I kind of like abandoned, right? This is the old code from the same REST API. I basically need this method, right? Because I kind of like changed few things in validation because I was playing around with a few ideas. Validation.core. Okay, let's grab this thing right there, and or maybe we can check out from version control, but still clean data. So one thing I also noticed, let's go to util. We have this function, right? So we had like select keys, and we will give it a map and keys. Basically it's a copy of the default function, which is like simple select keys. Now what I wanted in that in default behavior, we simply skip the null, like if we provide it index and index does not contain any value, it will simply skip that index. But what I wanted was to not skip that. Instead it should return like something like null, and so I kind of like created a loop. But now recently I just looked at it, I was thinking like, if we can convert this into a function, and yeah, we kind of like, I created this function which is like which works like the exact same code. So what we do here, we simply specified okay, so let's go over. So we have keys, right? So this is the key, and we have a map, and we will be looking at whether this map contains a certain set of keys, and just for readability, I am using get function, right? So what it does, it basically create a hash map, let's say hash map, right? And let's say key is something like could be test, right? The test will be our first key in this scenario, right? Let's say key is gonna be sequence of keys. So this and let's assume that first key is test, so we call this test as a keyword, right? Then we simply try to get get from m, and the key will be test, and in our case m is not defined. Let's do that, and if you run that, we get test nil. Hash map takes multiple argument and convert into a map, right? So it's a way to dynamically construct a map inside Clojure. So I have it in a callback just for readability. Then I kind of like map over all the keys. Let's define here, right? Def callback. Okay, m is missing in this context. Let's define def m. M could be test1, and that's about it. And we define the callback. Then we call this on keys. Let's say we get a get test, and will get something, right? And we don't have any value for something, but we have value for test. So this kind of solves it up, and now we can simply get rid of that. Let's remove this. Also, I noticed we are only using this method inside the valid inside this method. So we're going to move this from util to valid. And one thing in Clojure, you have to note that if let's say this clear data requires this function from top, you cannot simply define it at the bottom, because anytime Clojure execute this function, it simply does not wait for the next. It tries to execute this, right? So it will not. So you have to have all the dependencies for this function before that functions get called, right? So if you look at it, it's simply, this thing is like, it's a def in the end, like def clear data, and it will be something like fn with the argument. So it's this, right? Clear data, select keys, spec keys. Okay, so spec keys return the keys from spec, and I also changed that, right? So I think that is done. We will save that. Okay, so we're gonna comment it out, right? And wrap authentication, let's uncomment that. Also, before we do anything, cd train, cd org git GUI. So from very long we haven't committed anything, right? What it is, login we kind of add a top, right? And core validation core, it changed a bit, not much. We kind of renamed this method, right? Tags, it will be hard to tell. Util moved this function, ORM, so there is basically nothing inside ORM. DB, okay, so yeah, in DB we kind of like, when we insert anything, we kind of like attached timestamp, but I kind of like pulled out, because the reason was there are, in relationship we don't have timestamps. We can add it, but also we already using an extra ID like relationship, so you can like ignore ID for relationships too. Create so overall, let's try to run this, right? And that source code, it's under bit bucket, it's no longer under GitHub. The reason was I had like a few plans how I wanted that app to be. And then I kind of like pulled out this application in different. So I was gonna do one simple interface for let's say YouTube. Then I would probably like continue that project on my side, so as a long-term project. But I end up like deciding that I think in Notes it would be like hard to, let's say I made few changes in the repository that is public. It will be hard to copy all those changes into the existing project that I will be like building on the back. But yep, as of now I'm just working on this one thing, and we will see, right? So get ID, I'm not super sure about that. So also we might wanna have something routing. I'm not sure if I covered it, but I can kind of like also played around with the idea of adding public routing. And so those routes are protected with the wrap basic authentication, and it basically checks whether the request is authorized. If that is authorized, we kind of like serve the request, and we pass it to the handler. Else we kind of like send a response that the request is invalid and we cannot continue, right? And I think something like this we could also add for our spec validations. And what I noticed that one more thing I noticed in when we pipe that, the order is reversed somehow. I mean, it kind of confusing to wrap my head around it. And also I think if I could read more about it, like, so it should be clear from this, like first we wrap the params, then we convert those params to keywords. So it's like kind of reverse order but usually you are simply piping the data to the next function, I think this has something to do with the ring implementation, the ring middleware implementation, right? So what we're gonna do, let's run this. I'm pretty sure we're gonna like run into a lot of errors. Before we do that, let's so if you notice something, this I don't know if that was the controller, right? But never mind. Create so we simply have to get rid of that. I was trying that idea, but I end up not using that. I don't like that, I would say. So yeah, but I think we do need a way to like I think as of now I'm confident that we will add those validation in middleware, right? So we will be doing that maybe today or maybe at some time. But before we do that, we need to clear out to this mess we created. Read. So I think again I have to refer to my old code. Notes, read, create. Okay, API sign up. Select keys, login. Okay, so notes, we might want to do that. So with that, let's say you have like hundreds of endpoint. Probably it's common to have like 50 or 60, right? And if you have the same method, this common method all over the place, it's gonna be hard to change, like I described earlier, right? So we do wanna like have a proper fix for that early on. And we're gonna do this thing, and let's copy the spec method, copy paste there, then we get data, request data, right? So get rid of that, right? Okay, one thing I noticed with the plugin I'm using, whenever I print tab to like format this, let's say I format this, this kind of does not work with this like large keywords, right? So it will just basically shrink it, right? So that was kind of annoying. Clean data, right? So we have error. If error not nil, then we simply return the error. In any other case, we call the db create node, db create tags, right? So we have tags data, and we get inserted id. For logging, we kind of print those two. At some point we will be like grabbing tags, right? And before we do that, yeah, so also for this API I wanted to send the response, success response, more like login read create. So read API does not really have anything, and create validate user, validate this and validate that, and make sure this we are importing things correctly. Also, let's get rid of, okay, probably not get rid of that, but so this is gonna be our username, right? So let's close this letter and create password hash. Then we pipe that data to if error not null, right? So as you can see that anytime we can like make any change, it's gonna get like super error. It's gonna like have like lots of error. It's probably better to have it in one place instead of calling before each route, right? So I think I will figure out something. Maybe we will have some sort of rules where we define, where we kind of like define all the rules for routing. I'm not sure. So in a scenario like that, if we have like large team, maybe, but then again in large teams we have like 4 or 5 ideas and you work on one, and you simply have like three implementation of same idea. It's better to have one working and stick to it, right? So if not if null error, then we do this user password hash create can user login password hash and response. Then we kind of select user JWT data, more like encryption data to encrypt, right? So I think we also have to use as find in folders, as validate Now before I do that, let me grab some water, right? Lan ring run server, not headless, server headless. I'll be back. Before we do that, let's call cmd and print that command. Let's see if it starts. So yes, we do get a lot of errors as expected. Warning, no such a namespace. Okay. DB on login. Okay, this is the DB itself. Where is it? Libs DB. libs.db as db. So I think it's still kind of below. Okay, sign up and context data. Where is data? Okay, why would they say that data is missing, right? Okay, so in here the data is missing because we already have that, right? So we provide the hash password from data. Hasher is imported, validation TP HTTP. So keeping things simple, STP in Clojure. Okay, so we forgot to close something, that is the error. And yes, we did. And finally we have a running application. Let's open Insomnia and let's run the login. Unauthorized request. Now go to core.clj, right? Now what we're gonna do, we simply, let's see if there is any way to validate. We have this project, right? So it's in Metabase, and let's clear this cd. So I have this study folder where I put like projects that I I look into study, and there is database code. So let's look at how they handle validations and middlewares. They have like the really large project, and API database, table row count. Okay, emails, mustache, spec. Don't put data spec function for new drivers in this namespace. These ones are only here because they can also they can also be used for application dependent database driver. Okay, we're probably not gonna do that. So commands, core, API, collections. Now, so they have this application database source, right? And okay, let's see how they're going to what are the things they write test for. Data set, database test query. Okay, common. Do they have like code or CLJ libs database core, right? And also project.clj. Okay, so the main function is defined in here. That is cool. Now forget that. Let's open the core file, right? Command run command like java jar migration lease lock or line run migrate lease lock. With the no commands line argument start normally. Okay, starting database in standalone mode. Handler, app application handler, when config, but yet it's kind of like simple, right? But it's not that easy to read, probably. I mean, like, it's all over the place. Why would you write that long a method? Okay. Okay, do they use spec? Let's see. No, I noticed that they don't use spec, right? So they have something spec alpha. So they have like a different kind of library, which we kind of like ignored when we starting, right? Okay, map util. So they have like def API. Okay, forget this, get to the things we care about. Namespace, interesting. So in the namespace they kind of like, I'm not sure if it's a comment, probably it is, right? Private, lot of comments. I mean, this is kind of super large if you ask me. They're probably using some large desktops. I mean, I like it like concise, but never mind. So API def endpoint get. Now that's interesting. Okay, API def endpoint, def endpoint. So where they have like def macro for that? Def macro. There you go. So it's under common, right? Common. So what it does, right? When I noticed it, I was like super fun. I thought it's kind of like cool. Like I had some like similar idea in my mind for defining an API. Pre or routing and vector method. So this expression will be evaluated. Route will be evaluated. Okay. Def API endpoint. And so it's a function name, routing, typify, route. Okay, that's interesting. Right, doc string argument more, optional string, schema body, validate param caller, when not doc string, validate param call. Okay, so that's a side, but the thing is how they kind of like validate permission, user input. So let's see, go to project, and for validation schema, so they are using this library schema from Prismatic, and we probably want to search this in source directory. Find folder schema, right? Okay, so they have it in here as SU. Okay, so one thing they have as SU and the core boolean type. Okay, archive, maybe get this question ID. Interesting. Get, so this is like API endpoint get, then as a ID, if super username, then they have all these function that will be notify, new alert, and they are used for that route. Alert condition, maybe yes, maybe boolean. Okay, so yes, it kind of makes sense. Alert conditioner, alert above global card plus card ref, non-empty map archive. So this is like validations, right? So I think it will take more time to really understand everything, but so as of now, this is exactly what I thought when I was thinking about building a REST API in Clojure, because let's say most of the time. Okay, one more thing, when super name should let end this. Okay, so interesting. Alert plus vector notification or delete if not needed. Do sequence delete for delete id. So do they have like so first argument is method, then is like routing, then docstring, then argument, right? Admins are not allowed. So API check, now that is super interesting, right? If you think about it, so this they have like this check, API check, and admins are not allowed to unsubscribe from the alert. This should edit the alert, right? So they simply return the response in from here, and I'm wondering how would they handle it, because for today I was just thinking the same thing, and I think it would be nice if I read more about how what are they going, what are the things they are doing, right? So we could have like I will not probably not edit their code. So as API check, we could have like multiple checks, right, for this, and then add some more data. Super awesome. I think that's the only reason I wanted to try Clojure. But doing all these things right gonna take some time, but I guess in the end it's all worth it, because none of the other languages provide that functionality to like extend your language in that order, where you kind of simply create a mini DSL for your own stuff. And yeah, so it was in the common. Okay, method pre-string, pre has some properties. Okay, def endpoint. Okay, string route. Okay, vector. So we get method and route and more. So what do they do with the more? So in more they try to get docstring from args. Okay, and with more they get string. When not docstring, very meta sock meta root. So this is the crazy part, right? It's like validate param calls, right? So that's us. Okay, so validate params, it takes args and schema. Okay, eval the values in args and schema to make sure the actual schema is resolved, so we can document it. Okay, their API errors docstring log.1. Okay, so they have args validation for body var meta function assoc doc endpoint. Okay, so yeah, I think they have like their own custom macro for defining request, right? So one thing I also wanted to check, since they have like all these micros, right, So how do they like register this thing with the routing? Composure, get and put. Okay. Alert. Okay, so do they have like a load? Do they load something? So probably want to search inside Metabase. Okay, so internals, common internals, endpoint name, Clojure, Metabase schema. Let's say find load. Do they call load, right? Def load YAML path. That is fine. What I'm interested in is where this namespace is registered, right? So nowhere, and okay. Routing, so this is like a routing thing, routes. Okay, let's think, make it a bit short, probably it's hard to read. Def routes. Okay, redirect includes string, redirect includes query string. So this simply query string response, like response redirect, but phase also query the string, which embed no application content app resources, right? Not found, public resources, embed get index. Okay, so what is index? Routes. Okay, so we are already in routes, right? Where could be that index? Metabase routes index. Escape script base path. Public settings set URL base path, right? Load template, load entry point template, entry point. So lot of things going on in here. Okay, load inline JS, Google Analytics JS. So this, I guess this thing, those things has something to do with JS. Fallback localization, base href. Transformers, no, we're not interested in that. Common internals, routing, routes. Okay, routes in APIs or CLJ. middleware enforce authentication. So that's also good, right? So they simply enforce authentication by calling this. Now context activity routes. Now where activities came from? Oh, I see. Okay, so the macro kind of like expands and so all the routes that are defined by that macros will be stored in like something like that routes. Let's go to common, right? So common and def API not API, def macro. So it had like some API common, right? So def endpoint. So def endpoint, right? Let's grab this code and pull it out, and the Clojure syntax, change those syntax to Clojure CLJ UTF, no, sorry, it's Clojure, right? Now let's say route. Okay, so route method routes. Typify what it does. Why there is no reference for that function? Typify routes, right? Okay, so we have this route. Now what do they do with that? Method. What is method? Method is the first argument. Let's go to this. So this method, okay, method route and more. Convert route from simple form like to, okay, reply. So I think we kind of like have to do a bit of more soul searching, but I kind of now got the idea what they are, what how they are doing things, and yes, but like evaluating a proper macro, I think if you are really experienced in Clojure, it shouldn't be an issue, and yeah, I think we have to like try a lot of things to make it work, but in the end it's all fun and games with Clojure, if I'm not wrong, right? FNA method route. So I have to also check what this thing does. I know it's like I kind of just read about macros. This thing, it's like you are defining how would you put it? Yes, you are defining a template, and any expression that is inside this squiggly bracket, it's gonna be evaluated. So let's say if I remove that, the entire thing will be returned from the macro, but if you like put it, it's gonna evaluate this thing, the whole body. And then we have method routes and arguments, and I also like have to check so once you run this on a value, and what's gonna come out, is it a callback? So I have to see. or maybe I don't know, auto parse. So yeah, I think wrap response if needed. Interesting. Do body or only call on the result body, but is it global? Where does it come from? Because if I'm not wrong, so let's go there. Internals. Okay. If the response is already a map with key of status and body, wrap it in one using status code response. I see. So we will see, right? Okay. So yes, I think we have like two bit of tweaking. I will probably try to create a macro for our API, and we will see. I think I'm gonna close the stream now.